everybody. This is Pearl Sharenza with Women Successful Living, and you are watching another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And I am so excited because our guest, I've been trying to get her on here she's such a busy girl for a few weeks now. So I'm excited that you guys get to meet this amazing lady and hear all about her and her amazing story and really how she's empowering other women. And so I want to introduce you today to Crystal Fox. She's the host and creator of the podcast, Crystal Ball, Clarity of It All. She's also the co-founder of Everything Women. She's an entrepreneur, she's a speaker, and mental health advocate. She's making it her mission to break the stigma around mental health by creating those spaces to not only share her story and welcome authors, therapists, coaches, and other mental health advocates to share their overcoming stories. She believes in getting crystal clear in her purpose through putting herself first. Please help me welcome Crystal Fox. Hey, Crystal.
Hello. I'm so thankful you are having me on. You are such a beautiful soul, and I actually get to see your face now.
I know, it's so crazy. So for those of you that are listening, if you're not already familiar with Clubhouse and how maybe you're sitting in the shadows behind it all, but Crystal and I actually met through Clubhouse and we get to see each other's pictures, but we've never really had this visual face to face. And so it's really cool. We're doing this on a podcast. And I just love that you're here. And I just, every time I'm in a room with you and your partner, Jenna, and all the things you guys are doing, it's so amazing. But when I hear you talk, I hear the passion that you have for giving that safe space for women. Like no matter who's in the room or who's around you, you make sure they feel safe. And I think that's so amazing. And, oftentimes we hear how women knock each other down. And I love being in a space where we can pick each other up, right? And so I'm so excited to have you here so that we can, those that are listening, I know somebody's going to hear your story and be like, hey, I can resonate with that and really be inspired with what you're going to share with us today. So let's start off with just tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and then just give us some backstory of what brought you on this path today.
Oh my goodness, I'm still so excited to be here. And yeah, I am someone I would like to say a realist. I like to keep things very real, honest. I always have, and I thought it was wrong growing up. I just wanted to be different. Not so much go against the mold, just I felt different. I didn't feel like I had the same mentality or focus everyone else had on certain things. So breaking the stigma against mental health has just fulfilled my heart. I call it my passion project, this whole podcast, Crystal Ball, Clarity of It All. And I think it's really important I'll first take you back a little bit and tell you just how I even got here. To be honest, I'm very thankful. But it really started with me getting really burnt out. No one tells you about burnout. And I always kind of laugh because there was success, and that was the main focus. I wanted to ensure there was never going to be a time and place I would need something or want for something, because I grew up extremely poor. My parents were both addicts, even more ways than I had even known, and I was the youngest of three kids. My brother and sister both 9 to 12 years older, so there was a vast amount of years. So I feel like we lived different lives per se, even growing up in the same house. They got to see more of my parents being parents, where I saw, I call it Jekyll and Hyde. I got to see them kind of change by pretty much like 3 p.m. They would be different people. And I went through a long period of time where the nights were really dark between living with them. And my brother and sister were both outside of the house, and it was just me. And it was really, really hard. I didn't understand it then. And growing up, fast forwarding, like I lost my mom at 13 due to that addiction. My dad has pretty much lost any recollection. Like he wouldn't even be able to spell my name to you right now. And I haven't spoken to him since I was 14. So I was definitely someone always on my own, to the point where I had gotten into a relationship and he had even tried to like physically harm me. I had to call 911. I had bruises on me, and I knew I was better than that. So I got out immediately, which I know a lot of women, it's really hard. It's really hard. And I was very thankful for the people that were surrounding me. But in the same sense, I was actually homeless, and not a lot of people actually know that story. And I got lucky for going to cot, but because he had the house and everything that I had put my money into, he became a stalker. I had to get cops involved. It was just this whole thing. And that is actually something I have not shared, not even on my own podcast, to be honest with you, Pearl. And I just think that there's so much learning there. I then went on. That's why in the success in my career, I was working for a plus size fashion industry and traveling, opening up brick and mortars, training teams. And I just had this passion because I truly love women, and I love the spaces that we can sit there and create, because it's not about competition. It's actually about building each other, and it's not just talking, right? It's not just BSing and saying that to one up the next person and to what, and then talk bad about them. It's really to sit there and say, hey, I have this piece of information because this was my experience. You've gone through that, and we can actually learn and grow together and change, because women are amazing. Okay. Amazing, amazing. But we are told the opposite. Therefore, I put everything I had into my success. Now, I had been married, divorced because he cheated on me, and that was just by like 22. So I had lost my parents, my family. I had been homeless, married, divorced, and starting over an temp job. And that is where I actually met Marcus. And we have been together 10 years now. So I'm very thankful. And I always tell him I wouldn't have ever been in that point in time had I not gone through everything. But that didn't keep me away from, again, diving all in and keeping me to the wayside, like self-care. No, it was this job. This was the success, my determination, and in my dreams. Like, I love fashion and plus size fashion. Like, it fits me perfectly, right? Like, my closet is ridiculously filled, I'll be honest. Um, but it was just my creative side. But when they were well aware of my infertility issues, which I do talk about a lot, I suffer from PCOS, and there's not a lot of information out there for someone on PCOS. Clubhouse has been helping other doctors that are taking the initiative, but at the end of the day, infertility issues are going to be just that. They're hard. I suffered from two, one of them being at work at this job. So they were well aware, and I had a switch in management. I kind of get like a little choked up during this time. I because I never saw it going that way. And I literally stayed a year where she was a complete bully, and she gave me the ultimatum that I would need to choose between having a family or a career. Yeah, another woman told me that. And I was in a very fragile time. So I had to make the biggest decision, which was to leave. And I cried. I remember going in each and every day and just like high anxiety. My depression got 10 times worse because I didn't want to be there. I felt, taken for granted, and all of the bad things, like this company betrayed me. So I left and went back to the corporate job, and it was different. It wasn't as fast paced. You see the same people, and that's fine. I'm still actually at that job. I'm very blessed to have it, but it was a different pace. And it's different when you go from being the boss to not being the boss. That's just right. I'm just going to be really honest. And it was 2 months later, feeling the adjustment, that I found out that I was pregnant and was losing my third. So at this time, I had 3 miscarriages, and the medical field does not help any way, shape, or form on the mental health level. And I think that goes for moms too. And I've spoken about it several times, that there needs to be mental health support and more communication to what actually happens with your mind and your body. Because I felt like during that time frame, I could not even express to my husband this. It's more than just the cloud that you see on a commercial that's raining on you, but it was like sunken. I'm an extrovert. I can talk all day. I love people. I miss hugging people. But in this time, I went so inward. I was so sunken. And I just feel like the Crystal I knew wasn't there anymore. And I felt like incomplete as a woman. My body, was this my fault? What were all the things in the world I could have done differently? And of course, we blame ourselves first. And in that moment, I thought all the love I poured out in the world, all the support I gave to anyone, even when I was without, that when you're in your trying time, people will show up and pour that into you. And then somehow it's supposed to be this magical thing, right? I truly believed. And it just like you lift up from the ground and the tears fade away. But just like Mel Robbins says, like no one is coming to save you. And that was probably one of the biggest life lessons I have had to really figure out. And I'm in my 30s figuring it out. I thought I had been through enough, right? I listed everything out for you. But in this third miscarriage and everything leading up, I just felt like nothing. Depressed. I knew I needed an out and to find my voice. So if you could see, if you're listening to this audio wise, I have this mic and he is still my best friend. $25 mic from Amazon. I felt like podcasting gave me this small piece of the world back, just this little corner that I could just be me. But no, like, yes, people were listening, but it didn't really recall to me. It meant more what I was doing. So I feel like my first and second seasons was me being inspired by different topics I wanted to talk about and talking, honestly, talking. And this $25 mic helped me in so many different ways. I also paired with a therapist. There were things I didn't even know what I was going through and couldn't say. Now, I believe that I've learned more than just talk therapy. I think that can help you. But I meet amazing coaches like you, Pearl. And you take it a step further where you come into, like you've come into my life. You're sitting there, you don't know it, you're whether sitting in bed or on my couch with me, but you come into people's lives. And that is what I'm just kind of thankful for. Like my source is God, and I feel like he positioned me in a way to be surrounded by women to teach me things so I wasn't sunken anymore. Like season 3, I get to sit here with you. I get to listen to your stories, your experience. I get to listen to so many different women persevere when they too thought someone was coming to save them.
I mean, there's so many layers there. I'm just sitting here going, there's so many ways that I feel exactly what you're feeling, right? So like we've never really had the opportunity to truly share our story. So this is what I love about this show, is that we can have these conversations and nobody knows what we're going to share, right? And so I could picture when you were describing that little girl at 13 years old and even younger, going through and watching your parents, and I could just imagine that little girl going, why did my big brother and sister get to have, not have to go through this, and then, those why me things come in, right? And so, and then to go and then lose your mom, right? And then you fast forward, you're now your dad. I mean, I totally can resonate with your situation with your dad, and I'll share that in just some reason why. But to think about, I could just picture this little girl. Yeah, you're a teenager, but still, you're this little girl wanting that love of mom and dad. I'm looking at my friends, and they've got these great, from the outside looks great, normal life, right? And we don't know what happens behind closed doors, and to want that, and then to have to become homeless at such a young age and try to find that voice and that the way of saying I want help, right? And then you go down that path, and the person that you think is going to help you ends up not, because you just want to feel that love. And it's interesting you talked about that. I had a conversation with a friend of mine today, and her daughter had some surgery, and she it was like we kept talking. I'm going, do you think it's tied back to the surgery? Like she had this shift in her change of attitude, like quitting school and not wanting school, and then the people she's started to surround herself with, and we were talking about how moms, my story to become a mom is almost like the path of yours, that we feel like we have to, we have to carry all the burdens and we have to be that person to take care of, when the kids are down, we don't show too much emotions. But when it hits the dads and the dads start crying, like, that's so overwhelming to see. And to think that, here you are, this young girl that wanted the dad to be like, I just want you to cry because I'm hurting for me. Right. And to have to find your way, Crystal, and into this world of what's out there, at such a young age going, where do I fit? Where do I belong? I don't have a mom or dad to guide me anymore. And that whole process. And, then go down that path of wanting to have a family because you want to love somebody and bring, a beautiful child in this world. I totally, like when you're describing that, I was like going, like I have chills saying this right now. Chuck and we got married. I got married young, 19 years old, but we got engaged 19, got married, I was 21. And we've been together over 30 years. But the path to having children was 10 years in the making. I mean, it's fertility treatments and everything like you said, PCOS back then, they didn't call it PCOS. They didn't know PCOS back then. Yeah. So I had 7 fibroid tumor surgeries over a 7-year period. Yeah. And so finally we were like, okay, let's do a fertility treatment. We had moved from California to Virginia. And so we decided to try a treatment. And it was that we got, supposedly it was pregnant, but they come to find out the next center that we actually went to and had success, they're like, yeah, they're known for upping your meds to show a positive pregnancy, but in the hormone levels, but you're really not. So we'd gone through that whole process going, they took our money, right? It's like, they took our money. So we just kind of took a step back and we were like, we really want to have a family. And my husband, his dad died the day before he was born from leukemia. So he never knew his dad. And then he was raised by a beautiful stepfather, amazing man. And then in my family, we had adoption all around us. So we said, let's take that path. So we just kind of told everybody that's what we want to do. And so through our story and our journey, our oldest came to us from our heart. And, he's an amazing young man. He's Haitian and Czechoslovakian, so he's mixed race. And so my dad and my mom, and even my grandfather, was the cutest. It was an amazing story. Matthew was in California. So I had to go to California and my husband stayed behind in Virginia because we were going to take a while to get all the paperwork done. We had 2-week notice to go get Matthew. So I remember my grandfather and my dad was so excited for us. And then my grandfather, I was not only a daddy's girl, but I was a grandpa's girl. So it had the best of both worlds. And I remember my grandfather sitting on the couch and I said, hey, Grandpa, I have something in mom and dad's room for you. I'm going to go get it and bring it out. And I brought Matt out and he's like, I knew there was a baby in there. Right. So, but I can tell you like that whole journey, like going down that path and watching, my husband's the oldest of all his cousins. So here we are going to these little cousins, the closest one was like 5 years younger than him. So we'd be going to these weddings and we watch them having kids and we're like going, and then I'm sure you too, like your friends and family go,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. I'm so happy for you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just want that joy. And, the loss years later, we went through fertility and we were able to have our youngest son, Nate, through fertility, which was a miracle because, from going through that process, typically you get all these numerous number of eggs, hopefully that, we had 3 eggs that we were able to retrieve. So we had a 1 in 3 chance of something happening. Mm-hmm. And by miracles, God took care of us and we got Nate. Mm-hmm. So we have these 2 beautiful kids and I'm listening to you talk about your dad and it reminds me of my dad. I told you I was a daddy's girl, right? So my grandfather passed away when my youngest was 2. But my dad my parents got divorced after 43 years of marriage. Was not a pretty divorce. So we come fast forward. We kind of had gone our separate ways because of some of the things he did and he said to my kids around the divorce. And then so we kind of reconciled and he came to stay with us for a little bit. He lived with us for a little bit. Now Matthew was Matthew was like a freshman in high school. And all of a sudden my parents could never be grandparents. They always felt like they had to be parents. And I'm like, be the grandparents, let them get in trouble, let them do crazy stuff. I can be the one that's not like, right? I mean, it's just crazy. funny story is we went on a cruise and I come back and my mom had watched the boys and she's like, you need to talk to Matthew. I'm like, why don't I need to talk to Matthew? Well, because when he goes to bed at night, he plays with these army men. I'm like, Ma, do you remember when I was a little girl? I would play with the ribbon on my blanket. I'm like, he's just doing that to go to sleep. He's not playing not to go to sleep. He's getting himself go to sleep. So anyway, so my dad's with us, and my dad is really going after my son, being threatening to my son, all these things, and just he became racist to my son. So I had to draw the
No.
line. Yeah. And so I totally, I think about what you said with your dad, and I can resonate to somewhat of that because it's like he doesn't even know what we're doing in our family, right? Like his behavior is everything. He wouldn't even know what's happening, the good, bad, or indifferent that's happening in our family, right? And so I can't imagine what that is like. So my question through that is, as you've gone through that and PCOS, there's so many things, and you and I will have to talk after this because I have some
Mhm.
things that I would love to share with you. But you know I'm thinking about breaking the stigma, and your conversation that we're having here is like how I know how I felt, like you exactly how you felt. I know how I felt, like why me? I want to have all those feelings I can feel. And I remember when we were trying when we're trying for Nate, we were going through the process of one of the treatments for infertility, and I had a fibroid tumor come up, and they said we got to stop. I'm like, it's fine. He's like, I'm really sorry. I'm like, listen, doc, it's okay, because worst case scenario at that point we'd already adopted. I'll go adopt again. He's like, I would love for you to talk to some of the women and help them understand. I'm like, I've always wanted to do that. I still want to do that. And so then we tried again and we were able to have Nate. So, you know, how like what did you do and what are you doing now? Because you're still on this journey, right?
Mhm.
So what are you doing now? What would you say to somebody that's listening, that's walking the same path that we both just shared of trying to have a family? You're watching all these friends and people around you. I mean, I used to get so upset when I hear stories that people drop babies in the garbage can. I'm like, God, there's so
Mm,
many opportunities, right?
I
And
get so
I mean,
mad.
yeah, I get so frustrated. And that's just a lack for them of not knowing and being
Mhm.
scared of, that communication, not having parents and things like that, or adults to guide them, right? So what would you say, like your passion of breaking the stigma, like how do you find that strength as you're going through what you do to kind of pay that forward?
Yeah, I feel like strength comes from a lot of my support system, but it also comes from with me first. And I say that a lot because I, again, my source is God. So I think of me and him as an up and down, and that I have to be internally in tuned with myself. And that's why I say I'm still on the journey. And I think you're ever changing and growing. So you have to set within. But when I set in silence, which in the time of depression, I think that was also the reason, was because I had to face some things I would never think I would have to. And I also realized I was looking for love. I needed validation. I was a people pleaser and I still am. And I wanted to have what everyone else told me I needed to. And I honestly been living by everyone else's rule book. It was really up until this past year, holding a childless, child free space, that I realized I could love a child and I want one and I will. But at the same sense, I don't want it on someone else's terms because I'm supposed to, because I'm a woman. I want to make a life with my husband, and that's the discussion that we've actually been having, is what does life look like? I refer it back to Sex in the City when there's Carrie and Big, and they make that call where they're just not going to have kids, and they're like, but we get to go to all these vacations and we get to do all these things, and we get to have the big closet and do anything that we want. So I just first want to say, find the reason why, right? What's your purpose? What's your reason to have the child first? Because don't do it on someone else's account, and really look within, because I truly feel that there's that unconditional love, right? That I felt with my mother. But the same sense, like, even though she had that, it wasn't like it poured something and changed her circumstances. And I feel like having a child doesn't mean that the cup's pouring back into you. You really have to get in tune with pouring into you and saying, this is what I need. So I've been telling people, and people kind of cringe when I say selfish, but I don't mean go be a jerk. I'm just saying get in tune with yourself. And by doing that, what has helped me is journaling. I do 4 different journals, and each one of them I have a sad journal which I will not go back to once it's written in, but I keep them all out because your emotions, your thoughts, they flow. And especially having anxiety, there's so many things anxiety tells you. You got to put it in a book and put it away. So there's the cheerleading journal where it's like, I totally got this. Like, I got a task list today, but I got this, and this is why I got this. It's because I woke up, I did the things, I feel great. And if there's a confidence, like little check box at the bottom, so I can say, not feeling it today, but I'm going to write in here to tell myself that I can be anything and do anything. Or I can say my confidence is off the charts. I have a prompt journal. It's called Find Your Effing Happiness. And it has coloring pages. That's right. As an adult, why did we stop coloring? We did. And it was something we loved. We don't have to give away things we love. And when you tune into yourself, you realize you stopped doing a lot of things that you loved. Coloring was one of them. And it helps. It really helps if I just don't want to think in that moment and just focus. It brings my attention to it and takes everything away. But there's a lot of prompts, a lot, obviously by the name, you can tell a little snarky, a little, but it's fun and I laugh at it. And if you know my sense of humor, I'm like, this is me. And yeah, I also have my planner, and I just like the planner has the dump. So we're warriors, I feel like, as women. Like the task list goes, especially right before bed. I'm like, tomorrow I got to do this. In 6 years, in 9 years, I have this task list that I I have got to accomplish or do. Why I'm thinking about that at 9 p.m. on a Monday, I don't know why. So I just dump it in there and put it away until, hey, I have, 15 extra minutes. Let me pick something from the list.
I
So
love that.
I
I
would
love that
say,
you have all
yeah.
these I think it's so cool. And for those of you who are listening, if you know me, I say self-care isn't selfish. So way to go, Crystal. I love that you're pouring you first, because you don't take care of you first. You can't do and take care of everybody else. And it doesn't mean you have to do it 100% of the time. I talk often that, we climb this mountain, we're climbing this mountain of our life. And sometimes we need to sit in the rock and just look back and say, hey, this is where I've been, and journal about it. Like journal how you feel about it, all the successes, all the failures, what are your lessons, and I love that you got different journals for the different thought process, and then start climbing again. And then when you get to the top of the mountain, what happens? You got to come back down the mountain, right? So sooner or later, you got to come down the mountain, good, better, and different. But instead of rushing and falling down the mountain, why don't you just take your time going down the mountain and look and go, where am I going? Why am I going this way? And like you said, write about it, like journal about it. And if you need to get a coach, a therapist, whatever that is, for every woman that's listening, there's nothing wrong with that. Even coaches like me need coaches, right? I mean, you have to be confident. No, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think that's so powerful, so powerful to share. And I love we're having this conversation. I know we only have not too much more time, because I know you're going to do a clubhouse, but I think we need to do a 2.0. And really, like, I would need to do another one of these, because I think there's so much more we can go into. And I just love that we're having this conversation. And I would really love to have one around. I think there's so much out there around the being scared to ask for help. And then also around the journey you're going through of asking myself, Chuck and I did the same thing. What if we don't have kids? I mean, my brother and sister-in-law, they tried to have kids. And I think they're at a point now that they're like, what is life without kids? Hey, we get to go there. We don't have to find a sitter. It's almost like, what is life without having animals? I don't have to get somebody to babysit the kids anymore. I don't have to find, oh, I can't go here because I got to do this. Right. And for those that are listening, that's okay too. It's okay to say, what? Maybe this isn't the path for me. But if you're also listening and saying, what? Maybe not having my own child is not the path for me. And maybe there's somebody out there that's saying, what? Maybe adoption's for me, right? So I always tell all my friends, all my clients that I've coached through this journey as well, listen, tell everybody and anybody if you think adoption might be something for you. So for those that are listening, tell everybody and anybody That's how we got Matthew, because one of Chuck's old coworkers, remember, we were trying to have a family. And she called and said, hey, you got 2 weeks. Do you want this young man? And so we did a lot of reflection on it, the whole thing, especially because he was mixed race. And, there's a whole other story there. But, it's okay. And I think knowing that, I think having that conversation is so important, like you and your husband are doing, to say, you know what? Maybe God is saying, this is our path. And what can we do with it? Like what you're doing, like having the conversation to say, you know what, if it's not something that God's got standing for you, what has he really got standing for me? And then to stand in that gap of what he's preparing you for. I think it's such an important conversation. And I'm glad that you're having this conversation. I'm glad your friend, Mr. Mike, is allowing you to do podcasts around this conversation, because I think we need more of it, especially around the whole PCOS piece of it too, because there's so much out there. I met an amazing doctor here in Florida where I'm at, and he's really specializing in that. And he's talks about the fibroid tumor surgeries and all that stuff. And for me, I, after I had my youngest child, during pregnancy, I had another fibroid tumor show up. So I had a partial hysterectomy after he was born. So I was like, I'm done. And then I had another tumor even through that. So I had to have a complete hysterectomy. I had to go back in. And that doctor actually put me in his book, because he said when he went in and looked at everything, I actually had endometriosis inside my ovaries, which is very rare. So he said, that's why I had nobody would have ever known it if I hadn't had to have a hysterectomy. So, there's always reasons why God puts us on the path that we are on, and we are on the path for Matthew to come into our life. And he's been an amazing young man. And then having Nate come the way it is. But if the path is that maybe, you know what, this is the path we're supposed to be on, it's okay to accept that. And you're not anything less because you didn't have children. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being an amazing couple together. And you could go out and there's so many things you could do around children. There's guardian ad litems and things like that to help other kids. So I love that you're standing in that gap right now, Crystal, and that you guys are having that conversation. And I love that you are allowing Mr. Mike to help you get that message out. I think it's so powerful. So I want to thank you so much for doing this today, and allowing me to talk with you about this and to be open with us about this. It means a lot to me.
Thank you for honestly having the space as well, because that's what is breaking the stigma. It's the discussion. Honestly, I had so much shame around my story. And then I realized these were all the things that I just did to myself, but these are things that I have to work through. So I appreciate you allowing me to have the platform to really discuss other women to come forward and share your story. And PCOS, we
need to do a 2.0 on PCOS. Definitely.
Yes. There's so much that I
so
just want to talk to you about.
I also know you have some exciting news coming up. You have your podcast, but tell us like what's coming up for Crystal. Tell us what's coming up and where we can find you. I know we'll put social media links as well, but let everybody know I'm so excited about your experience that's coming up.
Yes, so I am officially a featured speaker. I am speaking July 31st at noon Central at the Share Your Pod Summit. And it's been, wow, a 180. And Mr. Mike, right, is here with me along the way. He will be featured there too. And I'm excited. I honestly cried when I got the news. And I've really gotten to know the community too. So I want to support. You can go get your free ticket at shareyourpod.com. You can follow me anywhere that it says Crystal Fox pretty much, but I'm at the Crystal Fox when it comes to Instagram. And Crystal Ball Clarity of It All is in over 20 countries. So you can find me on a lot of platforms and just join the conversation. I welcome you into those spaces and feel free to DM me anytime.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so everybody that's listening to the show, you always know that we do at the end with our guests is we do a pull a card and answer the card. So these are the Better Questions, Better Life. You can go to betterquestionsbetterlife.com and grab them. I get no kickback. It's a really good friend of mine who created these cards. She's a co-brander. Her name is Carol Gill. She co-brands my retreats. So I'm going to shuffle them. You're going to tell me when to stop, and you're going to answer the card that comes up. So I'm going to start. Tell me when to stop.
Okay. And stop.
All right. So your question is, how can I be kinder to myself?
Oh, if this isn't, oh, this one's perfect. I actually am working on showing myself more grace and living more by an 80-20 rule instead of expecting perfection. So I have an affirmation that is posted on my Instagram for the week to say that I am compassionate when I fail and allowing myself grace when I go through hard times to just be able to show up. Maybe I can't do all the things that day, but I'm going to show up and give myself grace.
I love it. Give yourself grace. You guys heard that here. Miss Crystal says, give yourself grace. So I'm so excited to have you guys all here. And I'm so excited, Crystal, you were with us today. And for those that are listening, I want to remind you, this is the Conversations with Pearl podcast. And don't forget that we are on Instagram at Women Successful Living. But in September 23rd, we have our 5th annual pajama retreat. We have 10 spots left. So if you want to come, hang in your pajamas for 4 days, no makeup. You can let the girls hang loose if you want to. It's totally fine with me. We're going to be empowered by amazing speakers. We have 7 amazing speakers. We've got a hoedown plan. So lots of fun activities that's going to be happening. Just go to our wsliving.com, wsliving.com, and go check out our retreats. Crystal, I'm so honored to have you here today. And I want to remind everybody that we come into this world as this beautiful oyster. And as you open up inside, you find your inner pearly greatness. So go find your inner pearly greatness and have an amazing day.